A lady pleads for assistance as she crouches in the dark alone in the opening scene, before being pulled by an unseen force. The action then shifts to Amy and Stacy, two best friends from America, who are traveling in Mexico with Jeff and Eric, their boyfriends. Amy discovers abruptly that she is missing an earring as they are having a great day at a resort in Cancun. The gang begins looking for the same thing until Matthias, a German traveler, approaches them. He says he recovered her earring in the swimming pool and gives it back to her. He accepts the group's invitation to have a drink since they are grateful. Matthias informs them throughout their conversation that he arrived here with his lost brother Heinrich, an archaeologist. Matthias had made plans to visit his friend Dmitri tomorrow at a distant Mayan ruin in the jungle, as his last known location is an archaeological dig. The couples gladly accept his invitation to accompany him when he asks them if they would want to. Following that, Matthias and the couple spent the evening at the beach. Amy finally becomes inebriated throughout this and wants to dance. She asks her boyfriend to do the same, but Jeff heads to his hotel room, since he's already exhausted. Amy asks Matthias to join her in a German dance because she wants to enjoy herself more. Stacy and Eric watch the two dance, with the latter placing a wager that Amy will kiss Matthias shortly. As he expected, Amy, who is inebriated, begins approaching Matthias. But before they can speak, Stacy steps in and grabs her pal. The two couples, Matthias and Dmitri included, prepare to travel to the ancient ruins the next morning. The group finds it challenging to get a transport to the remote ruins, which are 18 kilometers away. After getting off at the bus stop, they ask a local taxi driver to drive them there as they approach him. The man, however, tells them not to go to the Mayan temple and suggests they go somewhere else. Still, the group persuades him in the end by insisting and offering to pay twice as much. After driving them in the direction of their objective, the driver dumps them off in the midst of the forest, where they must hike. Amy is concerned about their return route, but Matthias reassures her that he has a satellite phone that can locate a signal and be used to hail a cab from any location. Subsequently, the group navigates further into the jungle using a hand map. Heinrich's abandoned jeep soon appears to them, indicating that they are headed in the correct direction. They eventually reach their target after a considerable amount of walking, a high, ancient ruin in the middle of the jungle, as well as a clearing. However, some Mayan villagers with guns, knives, bows, and arrows confront them before they can ascend. In addition to attempting to reassure them that they pose no threat, Matthias explains why they are there. Nevertheless, neither Spanish nor English are understood by the inhabitants. Amy ignores the gravity of the situation by standing in the back and using her camera to snap shots. She treads on several vines by mistake, which infuriates the locals greatly. Dmitri tries to give the camera back as an act of remorse, believing that they are upset over the picture. To the surprise of all, however, he is struck in the chest by an arrow and then gunned down by an elderly Mayan leader. The group is horrified by this and runs up the ruined steps. Remarkably, the villagers wait for them at the bottom rather than chasing after them. The gang finds an abandoned camp and a shaft that resembles a well in the middle after reaching the summit. When Matthias looks around, he sees his brother's lifeless body, which is a horrifying sight. When everyone sees this, they all go crazy, and Amy urges Matthias to call for assistance. But during the previous altercation, the villagers took hold of his satellite phone. Jeff advises them to wait there till help arrives as they are currently stranded. If they don't show up the next day to check out, he thinks the hotel staff will contact the authorities. They hear a phone ringing from someplace inside the ruins at that very moment. Upon realizing that it's his brother's ringtone, Matthias makes the decision to descend to investigate. Grabbing a lantern, he wraps a rope around himself and is gently lowered down the shaft by Jeff and Eric, using an overhead crank. Unfortunately, Matthias falls to the bottom when the rope breaks, revealing its extreme weakness. The other members of the gang, concerned, determine that one of them has to descend to assist him. Stacy offers to go while the boys fix the rope. After tying the rope around her, they carefully lower her. The rope, though, isn't long enough to lower her all the way. She consequently releases herself and leaps to the dirt floor. Even worse, she stumbles over a shattered lantern, piercing her knee with a shard of glass. She removes the shard and wraps the wound with a piece of cloth despite the severe agony. Subsequently, she scans her surroundings and discovers Matthias lying immobile. When she realizes that she cannot lift him by herself, she instructs the other group members to come up with an alternate plan. Amy recommends that they go to the Mayan villagers at the bottom for assistance. Amy, who is desperate, chooses to attempt despite Jeff's warnings that it's risky. Jeff pursues her down the slope. As soon as the Mayans see them, they order them to climb back up while holding them at gunpoint. The villagers reject the couple's pleas for assistance, despite their best efforts to explain their situation. Amy launches a bundle of vines at a small boy out of fury. The villagers get curiously alarmed by this and turn to face the youngster, behaving as though he has suddenly gained untouchability. The latter tries to clarify that he is innocent, but the villagers shoot him to death without mercy. Amy and Jeff run back to their pals, terrified. They learn from the incident that the vines are frightening the Mayans and that they are preventing them from leaving, because they have all come into contact with them. The gang then devises a plan of action. They build an improvised stretcher to raise Matthias. To assist Stacy in getting Matthias onto the stretcher, Amy goes down into the shaft. Matthias gets loaded by the two girls before the boys can lift him up. They all return to the surface eventually. As a pre-med student, Jeff examines Matthias and concludes that his condition is critical. Later, when Jeff is going through Dimitri's stuff, he finds his airline tickets for the next morning. Then he warns the gang that Dimitri's buddies will soon discover he's been missing and will come seeking for them. When Amy asks how they'll find out where they are, Jeff replies that Dimitri's pals have a copy of the map showing where they are. The gang sleeps in the tent with this optimism. Regretfully, the same night weird things begin to happen. The next morning, Stacy is horrified to see that a vine tendril has gotten into the wound on her leg. They immediately ask Jeff to check on him, and Amy goes to see how the perspiring Matthias is doing. She begins screaming at the top of her lungs a few seconds later. The surviving members run outside to discover a dismal scene. Matthias's lower legs have been consumed by the vines, which have wrapped themselves around them down to the bone. There are too many vines for Jeff to be able to get rid of them. Soon afterward, from far down the shaft, there's another ringing of the phone. Stacy and Amy decide to go back down in quest of the phone. Now that they are even more eager to get away. With their homemade torches in hand, the two girls set off on their errand. They follow a tiny path until they reach a tiny, vine-covered building that resembles a room. The body of a young archaeologist startles them as they scan their surroundings. In his hand they discover a broken phone, but it's not the one that rings. After a little while, one of the red blossoms among the vines catches Amy's eye. She discovers a startling truth as she approaches it. The plants are actually making the ringtone noises by vibrating their stamens. Amy touches the bloom out of curiosity, but the vines immediately become aggressive and start attacking them. The girls flee the room in a panic and barely escape the grasp of the vines as they emerge from the tunnel. Amy comes back to the surface and tells what she saw inside. She feels that they are being quarantined from whatever evil may be hiding among the ruins, therefore she is urging the group to depart immediately. But Jeff tells her that the people are armed and he advises them to wait for assistance. However, Matthias's condition deteriorates during this time. Following one more examination, Jeff breaks the devastating news that Matthias's legs must be amputated due to the infection's rapid spread. At first, everyone is opposed to the plan, but Jeff argues that Matthias wouldn't last very long at this rate. Matthias interrupts them in the middle of their quarrel and tells them to stop using such a weak voice. The girls are then told to stay inside the tent. While Jeff and Eric finish the horrible task, they smash the bones with a stone first, and then they use a pocket knife to cut it off. After that, they use a heated pan to cauterize the incisions, which finally stops the bleeding. In an attempt to drown out the screams, Stacy and Amy grip each other's ears. When they're finished, they emerge to see the vines removing the remaining flesh. It's obvious that the vines are carnivorous and are waiting for them to all perish. The boys watch the villagers while the two girls go to sleep. Amy shows them the vines that are crawling into her skin like snakes as Eric calls them into the tent at that same moment. Jeff realizes how serious the situation is, so he uses his pocket knife to cut the vine off of her leg and back. They then do their best to bandage her. However, Stacy still feels as like she has more inside of her and wants to let it out. She is forbidden by the others, who claim it's all in her head. Their presumption is disproven, though, as they get a glimpse of another creeping vine on her forehead. They nevertheless keep it a secret from Stacy and advise that they all take a short break. As the others in the group go off to sleep, Stacy emerges from the tent and begins stabbing herself in an effort to get rid of the vines. Others soon leave to discover an enraged Stacy with numerous open wounds. Eric tries to calm her down, but she fumbles the knife and kills him by stabbing him in the chest. The vines draw Eric away as the other members attempt to hold her back. Now overcome with regret and anguish, Stacy begs them to murder her. Jeff unwillingly gives in and ends her suffering. Following this, Jeff comes up with a scheme to help his girlfriend get away. He tells her that he will make a distraction at the bottom to buy her some time. Then he drags Stacy to the bottom while smearing her with her own blood. Assuming she is dead, he places her on the ground. Then, in an attempt to divert the Mayans' attention from Amy, he irritates and chastises them. Amy jumps up and heads for Heinrich's abandoned jeep as he carries on with his diatribe, but the Mayans follow her. Jeff is shot multiple times in the meantime, and then the old commander shoots him to death. Amy sprints as quickly as she can, avoiding multiple arrows along the way. She makes it to the jeep somehow, and she escapes before the Mayans catch up with her. But as she takes off, she feels something creeping up her face like a vine. The two Greek friends of Dimitri are shown in the last shot approaching the temple while strolling through the woods in search of him.